Welcome to NFL Live. We've already seen some deals happen this week, but the free agency negotiation window officially opens Monday. Today, ton of news and conversation coming your way about where the biggest names will end up and which teams will be involved. We begin with breaking news from Adam Schefter. Adam, the Raiders released quarterback Geno Smith.
1 year ago, they traded for Geno Smith to be their quarterback of the future, and now they are moving on from Geno Smith. They free up $8 million in salary cap space. There'll be a dead cap charge of $18.5 million that the Raiders are in strong position to absorb. And Geno Smith, barring a trade, an unexpected trade in the next week, will join the free agent pool of quarterbacks that now is expected to include Kyler Murray and quite possibly Tua Tagovailoa. Let's take a look at some of these quarterbacks who could be available, will be available here in the next week. Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, Malik Willis, Kirk Cousins, who will be released next week. And, of course, the draft with Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson. That will be of high interest to teams in the quarterback market, like the New York Jets, like the Arizona Cardinals, like the Miami Dolphins, like the New York Jets. All these teams out there vying for quarterbacks. We'll see how the quarterbacks shake out here in the next week to come. But Geno Smith will have some interest out there, a former Pro Bowl quarterback, and now he will be a free agent.
You wondered if they would keep Geno Smith there to make sure they had somebody in place if they didn't feel like they could protect Fernando Mendoza, the presumed #1 overall pick. That's not what they do. Lots to dive in here for the hour. Kevin Clark, Jeremy Fowler, Tim Hasselbeck here with Adam, of course. And Kevin, I'll start with you. You heard some of the destinations there that are quarterback-needy teams. Where do you think makes sense for Geno Smith?
Yeah, good news and bad news for Geno Smith. The good news is you can explain some of this away last year with the fact that it was a hopeless situation, okay? The bad news is the destinations you can go to, also hopeless situations. The New York Jets, where your mission, if you choose to accept it, is frankly job preservation. And in Miami, might be to get Arch Manning. That might be your job if you become the quarterback there. So he was by far the most sacked quarterback in football last year. He had a run game that was stuffed at the line far more than anybody else in football. So this was a tough situation for Geno Smith. I think in a different system with different coaches and different talent around him, he could have had a good year last year. That just wasn't in the cards. He didn't play well. He made mistakes. He is going to be on the second or even third tier of available quarterbacks. You're looking at Jets or Dolphins at best if he wants to start.
Yeah. Geno Smith believes he's going into a better situation now. He was unhappy last year with the way things went in the offensive line. Now he looks at a preferred destination like Minnesota. The Vikings are in a beautiful spot. They can sit back. They have these quarterbacks that are essentially free because they're getting all these guaranteed money by the teams that have cut them, whether it's Tua, Geno, Kyler Murray. These quarterbacks will be intrigued by playing there potentially. They can sit back and take one on the cheap for a team that's already in salary cap problems. So Geno's looking at Minnesota. Miami, I'm told he's intrigued by if they don't sign Malik Willis. And then is there a reunion with the Jets? I would say whatever the musical chairs are, the Jets are probably getting the last chair.
Yeah, Adam mentioned the Jets twice when he was talking about the quarterback-needy teams, and I think that probably speaks to just how needy they are. Tim, maybe an expected move by Vegas to move on from Geno, but now it does set up for expected #1 pick Fernando Mendoza to start day one. Is this the right move if and when he becomes a Raider?
I think it probably is. Look, there'll be another quarterback or two on that roster in Las Vegas. And, you know, there's always a chance that if they really don't feel like Mendoza is ready, that they can play somebody else at the beginning of the year. But I firmly believe it's easier to get better playing than it is watching someone play. And, you know, every organization can have their different philosophy on it. You know, and I think there, you know, are some people that believe there have been a few instances in the NFL where guys kind of been thrown out there too early in a bad situation. But again, I would still maintain if you drafted the right guy with the right, you know, physical ability, but then most importantly, the mental toughness and resolve, that weathering the storm and learning on the job is the better path to success than watching somebody else do it. So I don't think that this is anything that really changes or alters the plans in any way for Las Vegas with Mendoza, you know, presumably starting opening day.
Yeah, Tim is dead on. The way that practice rules are and training camp rules are, there aren't a lot of reps to go around. So if you take a guy first overall, you have to give him all the reps possible in July and August getting ready for the season. There is no value in spending September and saying that, oh, Andy Dalton's going to be our starter. Any of these guys you signed for $8 or $9 million. That is completely worthless in today's game. Mendoza, for me, needs to grow into that role. He knows where the ball should go. He has a high football IQ, but he needs to sort of clock the NFL speed, sense pressure on the backside, that kind of stuff. You can only learn that by playing, get him out there.
Let's also be clear here that the Raiders are going to bring in another veteran at some point in time. And in a perfect world, they'd like that veteran to get a lot of the reps and even potentially be the opening day starter in 2026. But we've heard a lot of teams talk about how they're going to bring along a first-round draft pick, especially a number 1 overall pick slowly. And, of course, then more often than not, that number 1 overall pick winds up starting on opening day. So there's still a lot that has to unfold from a quarterback standpoint in Las Vegas. But the one thing we do know is Geno Smith will not be there. And we do expect that Fernando Mendoza will be there. But they are going to bring in somebody else to challenge him. And again, I mentioned Geno Smith a year ago. How about the Seattle Seahawks? They move off Geno Smith. They trade him. They bring in Sam Darnold. They become the Super Bowl champions. And things change quick in the NFL.
That's a good point. I mean, Adam, if only the Raiders had somebody on their roster who they could trade away to get a massive haul back to help support Fernando Mendoza. I think his name is Max Crosby. What are the inklings about potentially trading away Crosby as of today?
Well, here's where we are today, Laura. I think that there have been teams waiting and wondering if the Raiders would move Max Crosby. There are any number of teams lined up ready to make an offer, who have made offers for Max Crosby, but the Raiders are not in any rush to get something done, at least as of now. Could that change on Monday when the legal tampering period opens? Sure. Could it change this weekend? Sure. It could change any time. But there have been teams that have been putting forth offers, and the Raiders have been very patient. They insist that they're not going to do something unless they get the price that they want, whether it's from Chicago or Dallas or Baltimore. What I think is interesting here, everybody's wondering if there'll be an A.J. Brown trade. Well, if there does happen to be an A.J. Brown trade, that then could free up money and give the Eagles added draft pick compensation to where maybe they could be a player for Max Crosby. There is still a lot that's going to unfold here in the days to come, and these situations can change rather quickly. Just when you think you might have a situation figured out, they sometimes make sharp turns and go in way different directions than people expect. And so, again, the Raiders are slow playing this. Everybody wants an answer. Everybody's waiting for an answer. The Raiders are in no rush, have been in no rush, to get a Max Crosby deal done. It doesn't mean they won't. There still is a feeling that they possibly will. But again, nothing close or imminent at this time.
Okay, wait a second, Adam, because I know you pretty well. You bring up A.J. Brown and that timeline. There's something. So what's
going on in Philadelphia?
What's the deal there? A.J. Brown, let's say that timeline somehow gets going a little faster, and then they've got the capital to potentially go get Max Crosby. What's going on?
Well, again, a lot of these situations depend on one another. And I think there has been a school of thought all along that the Eagles would keep A.J. Brown. But it seems like those trade winds just keep blowing. And they haven't quieted down. And so it's certainly possible here that before the new league year begins that the Eagles could deal A.J. Brown. It doesn't mean they will, Laura. It doesn't mean they will. We've gone back and forth on this a few times. But let's just operate in a world in which the Eagles do move A.J. Brown. If that does happen, all of a sudden, the Eagles have added draft capital. They have added flexibility. So if that happens, as creative and as thoughtful as the Eagles have been, all of a sudden they certainly could be a player in the Max Crosby sweepstakes. It doesn't mean they will. We're just going through all the machinations and possibilities, and that's certainly within the realm of options that's out there at this time. There's a lot of things that could happen. There's a lot of things we're all waiting to happen. But it certainly feels like the A.J. Brown trade talk, if anything, seems to be picking up rather than dying down. Ooh. And we'll see, of course, how that unfolds here in the days to come.
I love these machinations. Thank you, Adam, for all of that. We're going to stew on that here. Kevin, as you hear that, and maybe as A.J. Brown could relate to all of this, specifically, do you think now is the time for the Raiders to move on from Max Crosby?
Yeah, I went back and forth on this in the last couple of months, and I've come to the conclusion that the Max Crosby era in Vegas has run its course. He had the highest double-team rate of his career last year, over 30%. He had his lowest pressure rate because of that, because offenses are able to key in on him because there's not a lot of talent there in Vegas. They're not going to win a lot this year, maybe even the next few years. I just think he deserves to play on Sunday Night Football. Huge games for a contender. Get some trade value now, sell high.
Look, I would agree. I think the time is now as well. When you look at, where the Raiders are, they're rebuilding. They're picking number one in the draft, and they're going to take a quarterback. And I think that, there's sometimes a feeling that, you be careful. Like, you're going to draft a quarterback. Looks like he's going to play right away. How bad is the team that he's going to? Do you want to throw him into that situation? And I think it's fair to look at a couple of situations. Like, Caleb Williams was drafted. They weren't very good his rookie year, albeit that roster probably better than most for a number one pick. Drake May was drafted in the first round, pretty high in the first round. He went to kind of what a lot of people would say was, a pretty deficient team in terms of talent across the board on both sides of the ball his rookie year. Well, both of those quarterbacks were able to kind of get guys around him, over a year's time, improve that football team, and the teams and the quarterbacks made huge strides. So I do think that when you're looking at, where the Raiders are, they're not close. And so, look, moving Crosby, building for the future around your young quarterback just seems like from a team building perspective, an eye towards the future, it just makes the most sense.
Yeah, Tim, here's what teams are wrestling with right now. Max Crosby, the Raiders want a premier package for him. He's a premier player. This is not a salary dump. This is a top 5 to 6 edge rusher. They need serious draft capital to make this trade happen. Well, teams want to be in on this. I know Dallas, for one, is definitely in on this, but can they get to the point where the Raiders are comfortable? Is that 2 first-round picks and a player? Like, will teams go that far when he's 28 years old? Micah Parsons, when that trade got done, he was 24 years old. So a little bit of a different situation. I love that Adam brought up the Eagles because I feel like they have 6 different balls in the air right now. They're trying to re-sign Jalen Phillips, but he might hit free agency. So do they pivot to a Max Crosby? Jonathan Grenard with Minnesota. I believe they've kicked the tires on that situation. And then they got Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter in the inside of the defensive line that they would like to re-sign. So it feels like something's going to happen with Philadelphia that doesn't even include A.J. Brown right now.
Insiders just throwing the tea leaves out there for us. I love this.
Yeah, we'll continue to keep that going here. Don't go anywhere here on NFL Live. We've got it all for you. Let's get to some more top stories. Tons of news flying around the NFL, right? Adam, let's start with the latest.